You guys want to know the truth? My first couple of documentaries failed so miserably that I questioned whether or not I still want to do this. I spent so much time, money, effort, energy, and it burned me out because I failed to do a few really important things that could have decided the fate of my career. And today I want to help you guys avoid some of these huge mistakes that I made early on in my career to help you guys kickstart your documentary film projects and hopefully get your film projects to the finish line. The first mistake that I made was not having a clear understanding of how I was going to tell this story. I had a rough idea outlined on paper, but I never really defined a beginning, middle, and end to my project. And for some of you guys, you might be thinking to yourself, well, why do you need to know the beginning, middle, and end of a documentary? Isn't it supposed to be something that you find out along the way as you're filming? And in some cases, yes, you are doing some sort of investigation, or like what I'm doing with Law of the Goat, I'm following these athletes around and kind of just documenting their lives. But when you have an idea of what your beginning, middle, and end looks like, at least you have options to where the story can go and how the story can evolve. And it helps you stay on track and answer some of the questions like what kind of B-roll or who to interview for your documentary, and even what questions to ask them in the interview. Because if you just go in blind and you just grab your camera and you start following people around, I'm telling you guys right now, there's going to be a lot of time wasted. And for some of you guys, maybe you have that time, maybe you have that budget. But for most of us, I know that we more often than not don't. Either we have to fly out to a distant location, or maybe we're even following someone around in our hometown, but we don't have, weeks or even months on end to follow somebody around and hope that something happens, or hope that we find a story that evolves and takes place. You see, when I was making my first film, the intro was incredible. I had a great hook, beautiful cinematic footage, and I definitely reeled you in. But after the first couple of minutes of my film, it just went completely off the rails. I didn't really have a good understanding of how I was going to evolve this story into bringing in the conflict and other characters and how those characters evolved in the story. I was just shooting for months on end, hoping that I would find the story in the edit. And what this forced me to do is do pickup shot after pickup shot, racking up the production cost, where I could have been able to use that money in so many other ways to help me actually finish this film. And what I quickly learned is that you should never go into a project, especially of this scale, without a good pre-production plan. What I like to do is I like to write a script or a treatment for my documentaries, and even though things might evolve and things might change, at the very least I have a guide and an idea of how I want this story to evolve. And if you guys want to learn more about documentary filmmaking, me and my team have been hard at work putting together this documentary filmmaking course for the last couple of years, and we plan to release it this year. So if you guys want to find out more about that, I'll leave a link right up here where you guys can click on that, find out a little bit more about what we're trying to do, and sign up for the email list, and you'll be notified as soon as the course drops. One of the biggest mistakes that I made was letting my passion and my excitement blind me. When I first started, I was so excited to just jump into a project and just start creating and filming things that I would ignore all the red flags. And while I think passion and excitement is great for so many reasons, you have to pay attention to some very important details. The first thing that you need to do before you start working on any documentary project, make sure that you're very clear and upfront about the terms of the agreement, such as defining whether or not this is a work for hire, or are they giving you the right to tell their story. In other words, are you getting paid to produce this project, or is this your project and your story to tell? Now, that's an extremely important aspect of defining these terms, because if you're the one that's putting up all the money, if you're the one that's putting up all the time and energy, and you're not getting paid for any of this, this becomes your story to tell. Of course, that person has to agree to that, but you should have the right to tell it the way that you want to tell it, and they shouldn't have the right to review any edits or make any changes or have revisions for you. You're not working for them. Now, on the flip side, if they are paying you, you're kind of a work for hire and you're taking them on almost as a client. And if they do want revisions, or they do want this story to be told in a certain light or a certain way, then you kind of have to adjust that and make it the way they want you to make it. Now, the other thing that needs to be defined is how are the rights to this information or this documentary going to be divided? What percentage of the documentary do you own? Again, if they're paying you for something like this, chances are they're going to want a large portion of the documentary. But if you're the one putting up all the money, the crew cost, the travel cost, and you're the one putting all the time and effort and energy into it, then they should be the one to own a very small percentage, if a percentage at all. And then the third thing that you got to think about is, what is their contribution to the documentary? What are you on the hook for delivering, and what are they on the hook for delivering? All of this needs to be laid out in very clear terms on a contract, or at least a document, just so that everybody's very clear and aware of what it is and what part and role they play in this documentary. A huge mistake that I made was not getting all of these details laid out on a contract ahead of time, and both parties understanding exactly what the terms of the agreement were. And just to give you guys an example of the nightmare that I went through, me and my team went out and started producing this documentary. We spent a ton of money on production costs, rental gear, travel costs. And then when it came time to start the post-production process, we reached out to him just to go over the final terms of the documentary upon release. And he said that he wanted 75% of the documentary that we shot. Otherwise, he wasn't going to allow us to use any of the footage that we shot.
Oh, you crazy.
And not only was this a huge blow to the project that we made, but we also had to swallow all the production costs, as well as be prepared to swallow all the post-production costs and give up 75% of the rights to the film, which is absolutely insane. And that's exactly why I'm trying to tell you guys, you have to make sure that you get these terms laid out very clearly before you start your project. Now, the other thing that you have to pay attention to, and this is a lot less obvious than laying out terms on a contract, but paying attention to the character types that you decide to invest in. I have worked with people in the past that were so flaky and would literally have meltdowns on set, or while we would have a whole production schedule laid out and ready to film, they would cancel last minute on the day of production over and over and over again, after I already paid my crew, after I already rented a bunch of film equipment and gear. So you have to pay attention to character types and understand the people that you're trying to work with. It's almost as if you have to do a pre-interview with them, not only to get an understanding of who they are and their story that you're trying to tell, but you also have to pre-interview them to make sure that they're not crazy, or to make sure that they're reliable and they're going to be as excited and as much invested into this project as you are. So before you decide to jump into a project, just make sure that you take a second and you evaluate who you're doing this project on, what it is that you need, how much money that you're going to spend, all the terms of the agreement. Everybody in both parties agree, and you get that all laid out and finalized before you grab your camera and you start shooting. Because truth is, guys, as filmmakers, we are so eager to make a film, and we're so passionate about what we want to do and who we want to do it for. But the truth is that we have to make sure that we protect ourselves, and we go into a documentary and we think about a documentary as an investment in time, an investment in money, and an investment in our skill set, our investment in our passion. But the truth is, your passion and your dedication for this craft is finite. And if you decide to waste it on the wrong project and the wrong people, and you get burned over and over and over again, it might kill your passion. It might kill your drive to go out there and make films. So just make sure that you're thinking about that before you jump into a project. Now, another big one that you guys have to pay attention to even before you touch your camera is understanding what your budget for this film is. It's important to know, do I have a $1,000 budget? Do I have a $10,000 budget? Do I have a $100,000 budget? Whatever it is, it's extremely important to know what your budget is and how much you're willing to spend on this project, because that's going to allow you to lay out and evaluate what production costs should be, what your time is on this project, how much time you're willing to spend. And basically, when you figure out your overall production costs and your overall production budget, what this allows you to do is figure out what kind of equipment and crew you could afford to bring out with you on certain days. Can you afford a crew? Do you have to shoot everything by yourself? You're going to start to answer some of those questions. And then also, what does post-production look like? Think about all the little details and all the little things that you need. Don't just think about the shiny new camera that you need to go out and buy. Think about, is it better to rent my gear? Is it better to buy my gear? Do I have more of a really strong idea of how many production days that I'm going to have? Or is this kind of an open-ended project? All of these questions need to be answered before you go out and film anything, because if you just run out and start filming without an idea of how much money you're going to spend or how much time you're going to spend on this, you're going to very quickly run into barriers that are not going to allow you to finish this film. And I'm only telling you guys this because that's exactly what happened to me on one of my first film projects, is that, you know, I thought to myself, like, $5,000 to $10,000, I could make that work. I could put in the time and effort and energy to do whatever job that I needed to do to make sure that this project got done. But over the course of several months, I would get booked on other projects that would take up my time, and I wouldn't be able to sit down and just go through hours and hours of footage and cut all that stuff up. So I needed to hire an assistant editor, but there was no money in the budget to hire that because I already spent all of my money on production costs. So just think about that before you jump into filming anything. Another big mistake that I made was I went out and I shot all of this really beautiful cinematic B-roll. We rented really nice cameras and really nice lenses, and I hired a crew, and we went out and we shot this project. And while we got all this beautiful, nice B-roll, it only took up about a couple of minutes of the film. And I realized very quickly that that money could have been used and spent on so many other things rather than just a few really nice B-roll shots. And then I also really wish that I had a producer on set to help me kind of wrangle in, you know, all the different scheduling and the cost of production and all of these different little things, rather than go out and spend this money on some really nice B-roll that, truth be told, is nice and it's very polished and good for a portfolio, but for the final ending project, it really does very little for you. So just think about that before you guys go out and film anything. Another huge tip that I have for you guys, and something that you should definitely consider doing, is editing as you go. A huge mistake that I made when I was making my first documentaries is that we would go out and we would shoot for months on end, and we would just stockpile all this footage. And obviously we would be organizing it in folders, but we never really sat down and took a look at all the footage we had and took stock of the interviews, the B-roll, the verite footage, and figured out, you know, how is this story shaping out? What are we missing? What do we not have? We waited until we shot the entire documentary to actually start cutting and organizing things, and this messed us up for two big reasons. The first reason why I don't suggest this is because all of that footage that you're shooting and, you know, the B-roll, the interview questions that you're asking, all of that stuff that made sense creatively while you were doing it is now gone, because now you're just watching a bunch of really old interview and B-roll footage without context of the creative vision that you had while you were shooting it on set. And the second reason why this is not a really great idea is because you could have all the interview footage that you need, or you could be completely way off. And that's something that we are implementing into this documentary filmmaking course. We want to make sure that we're giving you all the tools, not only the technical and the filmmaking and storytelling tools that you need to tell a story, but also the mindset and what it takes to actually take a project from, you know, ideation to final edit and define what that success is for you and help you guys get to where you want to go. Because making a documentary and finishing it is one thing, but monetizing it and seeing it through to gain the traction and the success that you want for yourself as a filmmaker is a whole nother story and a whole nother ball game. But that's something that we're going to implement into this documentary course, and that's something that I'm very proud to be able to give to you guys. So, you know, like I said before, guys, I'm going to leave a link right up here. You guys can click on that, sign up for this documentary filmmaking course. And if you guys have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the comments down below. This is my passion. This is what I love to do, and this is what I love to talk about. And yeah, man, I'll see you guys in the next one. Deuces.